Let's bring in now Ric Grenell. He's the former acting director of national intelligence and the former ambassador to Germany. And as we wait for President Biden to mount the stairs there on Air Force One, Ric, to you, the real crux, the centerpiece of everything that happened here in Geneva happened long before they got anywhere near Switzerland. And that was when Joe Biden, for all intents and purposes, gave a green light for Nord Stream 2, that pipeline between Russia and Germany, to be completed. Tell us your thinking about that.
Well, I think what you're seeing is President Putin is extremely pleased that he got this massive pipeline, which for the next several decades will give him power, leverage, and a lot of cash. So you'll have to understand that when he has to sit through a press conference and he's willing to take, 55 minutes worth of questions when Joe Biden only takes 22 minutes of questions. He can take some criticism from the G7. He doesn't care because all of that is just criticism in the press. He got a pipeline. And I think it's pretty atrocious that we sat through a 22-minute press conference and not a single question about Nord Stream 2 from the reporters there. This is Pravda. The question from Pravda, the Russian, paper that is controlled by the Russian government, is no different than what our press corps is doing right now. To ignore Nord Stream 2, to ignore the fact that before you meet with Putin to ask him about all of the cyber attacks, help in Afghanistan, Navalny, all of these other issues, President Putin is going to sit through all of that little bit of uncomfortableness from words because you gave him a pipeline. And I have to say one other thing. I disagree strongly that foreign policy is just simply the selfish act of personal relationships. That was a little piece inside Joe Biden and probably the reason why Nord Stream 2 pipeline was given to Chancellor Merkel, because he doesn't want to have anyone in Europe say anything bad about him. He wants the applause of Europe. And that's a very scary thing. You have to have a leader that's willing to make decisions for what's best for America, and it may not always be popular in Europe.
Ambassador, I was really looking forward to getting your reaction to something going back to Vladimir Putin's press conference when he deflected on questions about human rights abuses. And then he turned and brought up gun violence in the United States, drone strikes, and Guantanamo Bay, saying, quote, everything that happens in our countries, one way or another, is the responsibility of the leaders themselves. What was your reaction when you heard that from Putin?
Well, first of all, let me just compliment President Biden on one thing. Bringing up human rights is a very good thing. I spent 8 years at the UN, and we constantly brought up human rights. The Russians get very uncomfortable, and so do the Chinese, when you talk about human rights. And so we've always had, we, the United States, have always had the moral authority to talk about that. But over the last 4 years, we've seen Democrats weaponize this idea that America is racist. And you see their words, what the Democrats have been messaging to Americans and to the media have been trumpeting it, is that for the last 4 years, we have systemic racism. Now, you think about that. Systemic racism means that the system supports racism, that somehow we push racism. That's not, that's fundamentally different because we may have some problems now and then, and we can focus on those problems, but the system does not support racism in America. That's outrageous, and no one should be surprised when the Chinese bring it up, when the Russians bring it up, when they start delivering the Democratic talking points. We've got a problem with politics in the United States.
Ambassador, the way that this all went down with Vladimir Putin taking some 17 or 20 questions during a 55-minute session initially, and then President Biden coming out, Putin sat there and he denied, he deflected, he tried to turn things back on the United States. Was President Biden effective in countering what President Putin had said for the almost hour before the President of the United States came out?
Well, first of all, there's no better way to do that than to have them standing side by side, to be able to respond. First of all, when you stand side by side with leaders, you can't wiggle your way out of what was intended by the question or what was said in the previous meeting. And so I don't understand why they couldn't show unity, show transparency, show a sense of loyalty to the truth by both standing there and taking the same questions. Usually we have a reporter ask each individual a question, and that is much more transparent. The reporters should have insisted on that. There should have been a lot of criticism, but instead, you know, we had question after question after question, which were very easy questions for Biden. I'm glad that he took the opportunity to talk about a breadth of issues, human rights and Afghanistan and a whole bunch of issues. It shows that they did have a long and diverse conversation. But still, at the end of the day, I can't get over the fact that, of course, Putin is going to be in a great mood. Of course, he's going to sit through any criticism because he got a pipeline for the next decades that's full of leverage and cash.
We are about to see the president, President Biden, arriving there. He will be getting on board Air Force One in just a moment. But if I could, Ambassador, as we just heard from President Biden, it was Putin that we listened to just a couple hours ago. Again, as you see President Biden arriving here, we should see him in a moment. But here's a moment from Putin earlier when he was asked if he was satisfied with Biden's explanation over his killer comments. Real quick, and then we'll see the president.
We've discussed harsh statements as well. We've heard them. He called me right afterwards. He explained himself, and I was fully all right with what he said.
Your reaction to that, Ambassador?
Look, we should try to get along with Russia. We should try to get along with every other country. And so that's a private conversation. I liked the fact that President Biden said, look, I'm not going to go into it. I was satisfied, or he was satisfied. And he chose not to inflame that. I think that that's a good thing. I also think it would have been a really good thing for the media to push on that, to play fair, to not let President Biden just get away with it. They certainly would not have done that with President Trump. I think that the media have got to play fair, but in a situation like this, the leader of the free world trying to get along with Russia while also privately pushing him where we need to push him and his government, I think is exactly the right tone.
You know, so five American presidents now have been dealing with Vladimir Putin. He's outlasted them all. And, you know, you go back to July of 2001 when President Bush 43 famously stood on the same stage with Putin just outside of Ljubljana in Slovenia and said, I looked into his eyes and I saw his soul. And then a few years later, John McCain said, I looked into his eyes and I saw three letters, KGB. I mean, Rick, you know this guy. Who is he, and can he be dealt with, or does he simply have his own best interests at heart?
Look, I think you have to go into negotiating with the Russians with a very clear set of eyes and knowing what they value and what they maximize. I spent 8 years at the UN working with Lavrov, who's now the foreign minister in Russia, and negotiating with the Russians. They don't respond to moral arguments. You can't really say the international community demands or wants you to do something. They don't care. That's not what they maximize. What they care about is money, trade, oil. And so you've got to talk their language. You've got to be able to negotiate from a position of strength. You have to leverage your relationship. That's why I loved when President Trump would put all of the U.S. government tools on the table. He wasn't just going to negotiate from moral superiority, but he was going to negotiate with tariffs and finances, Treasury, State Department, Commerce, Agriculture. We have a lot to leverage, and we should be using all of the levers of the U.S. government in order to get what we want. I do think that at the end of the day, that the Russians are always going to do what the Russians do, which is lie and do cyber attacks on us. They are not someone that we can trust. And so we're going to have a relationship where we do what Ronald Reagan said. You can trust their words, but you got to verify and then come back to them and make sure you hold them to account, because they're going to lie whenever they have a chance.
And Biden actually turned that one around and he said, we'll verify first and then we'll think about trusting. Ambassador Ric Grenell, always good to talk to you. Thank you so much. Appreciate your time.
Thanks, Ambassador.
Thanks. All the best to you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Brian Kilmeade. I want you to do me a favor. I want you to click to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page. This is the only way that I know for sure that you're not going to miss any great commentary, any great news bites, any great interviews coming your way on Fox. You can get it all here on YouTube. So subscribe right now.